Mrs. Michelle.
Hi.
Hey.
There. This woman has no introduction. Let's give one more and then we'll quiet down. Come on. Okay. Okay, everybody.
Love you guys so much. Wow, this has been a day, huh?
This has been a day. Okay. So I would like to start by saying thank you for all of the elements that conspired to bring you into our lives. For the womanhood, the power, the grace, the beauty that all comes through the beingness of a Black woman has been life-changing and culture-shifting. Did you hear me say that?
Yes.
Life-changing and culture-shifting, and we are so grateful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so guys, are you going to be able to hear us if you keep screaming? All right.
All right, you guys. There you go.
I know,
so that everybody
the most lovable, beloved woman ever.
I am humbled, and I'm honored and happy to be here. Tracee and I were being bad backstage chatting.
We were chatting, and we almost missed our intro.
Is that us? So,
thank you,
Tracee, for being here. This is one of my favorite people in the whole wide world.
Is there that picture of us? So, Mrs. O and I met in 2008, 2009. I went to the White House at the time for a mentor program. And we started a dialogue that I believe that we are still in.
We're still in.
I know that all of you feel this, but even now, as two friends that text each other, I still cannot call her Michelle.
That, you know. And
I trick around it like, hey.
I know, a lot of people do that. It's like, hey, it's like, you don't know what to call me now, do you?
I won't do it.
It's Michelle.
No, you make me feel like I want to curtsy.
It's odd. It is odd. You can't call me hey you for the rest of our lives
all right,
together.
We'll see, but I doubt it.
All right, but take your time.
I was raised where, respect is given, and you deserve it.
Well.
All right, let's get into the conversation.
Okay, let's talk.
So there's a lot of talk about using your voice, standing up for something. And I'm curious if you remember the first time that you used your voice, or that you couldn't be an innocent bystander. Like, you had to speak up, and what it was that gave you the courage to do that, and what it felt like.
You know, there are so many of those instances because I was that little kid. I was the bossy little kid, and I was fortunate enough to have parents who appreciated my opinions and my voice from a very early age. And I say that to parents out there. You know, how do you start teaching voice? You teach it young by listening and asking your child questions and hearing their opinion. And, you know, you can't be rude, but I was allowed to express myself. And one of my first times, I remember my paternal grandfather, Dandy, and I write about this in my book. Dandy, I love my grandfather, Dandy, but he could be kind of a bully sometimes. And for reasons I discuss in the book, just the way his life worked out and his disappointments, there were times that sometimes he would be a bully to my grandmother, you know, just sort of complaining about dinner. And we would go to dinner at their house every Sunday. He'd have the big console TV on, and he'd have his cigar in Chicago. And he would be complaining about something, you know. And I was probably 4 at the time, and no one contradicted Dandy. but except for me. And at a very early age, I would just go up to him and say, Dandy, why are you yelling? You know, what is your problem? You shouldn't yell at grandma like that. And my aunts and uncles who were younger than my father, but they were teenagers at the time, they would never talk back to him. And I felt like I had to stand up for my grandmother because she was more traditional. You know, you didn't talk back to your husband, and she was a church-going woman. She was very soft-spoken, and she would just sort of take it. But I just couldn't stand by, even at 4, and watch her be yelled at for no reason. So, but my parents supported that.
And I was going to say, so that brings me to another question that I have, which is one that my mother wanted me to ask.
Yeah.
Which is, and by the way,
we know her mom, right?
I actually have, I remember saying when you were talking, I remember, because my mom also encouraged a voice. And I remember, I don't know how old I was, very, very, very young. And my mom did you can't have your cake and eat it too. And I said, why not? And she said, I don't know. But I had a tendency to, and I had to learn how to do it respectfully.
That's right.
But
but it starts very young.
It does, and it grows into something.
Even teachers, I mean, if I felt like some injustice happened to me at school, I spoke up. I remember I couldn't get I didn't get all the words right in a spelling exercise or a reading exercise when I was in kindergarten. I missed the word white. I couldn't sound it out. I could read. I could read, but for whatever reason, that was the first time I remember choking in kindergarten. I just choked. I got all the letters. I could read. I knew I could read. But it was a little peer pressure. I got nervous. I blacked out. And I remember this clearly. And there were 3 other smart kids in the class. And I knew that I needed to get a star that day or else the teacher wouldn't think I was smart. So I went home and I stayed up all night working on those words. And I went back, and that poor little kindergarten teacher, I said, I want to redo my words. And she said, well, we're not doing that today. And I said, nope, I gotta get my star today. And she pulled me aside, and we tested the words, and I got them all right. She gave me my star. She probably thought, please just go play with the blocks. I don't even know where you came from.
I hear 2 good lessons there. When you get nervous, which is so interesting to think that you get nervous.
Oh, God,
But when you do, that you can sometimes get another try.
Absolutely.
And we learn from our mistakes and in those moments. Because so there's 2 parts to what I was thinking as you were talking. Do you remember something specific that someone said to you growing up that helped to guide you to become the woman you are today? And I wonder if that came from your mom, hearing the relationship that you had.
It's never one thing. It's like
it's all
many lessons. I mean, when you have my mom is my rock, my role model, my parents. So much of the lessons that they taught us spin around in my head every single day. But the thing that makes you, it isn't the one thing, it's the many things, it's whether you got that star in kindergarten, it's what that 3rd grade teacher said to you that made you feel good about yourself. It's the fact that it was the love that my father showed me. I mean, this is the thing for men in the room. I mean, having a man in a young woman's life who adores her and treats her like an equal to my brother. My dad taught me to box right along with my brother. He got me my little set of boxing gloves, and I was punching out my cousins, and we were right there in it. When he taught my brother how to throw, he taught me how to throw. It's little things like that, but the thing about it is, Tracee, which is what we have to remember, little kids remember all those good points of input, but they remember the bad too.
Yeah.
Kids know when they're being invested in, when people believe in them, when people care about them. But kids also know when they're not being invested in. They know when they're labeled a bad kid early, when somebody doesn't give them a break, when they're not in a good school. Kids know when they're in the school that's not being invested in. And that's the thing we lose sight of. We think, well, they're just kids. It's like, no. Kids know. They know when somebody cares about them and when somebody thinks highly of them, and they know when people don't give a crap about them.
Yeah. So then the question would be, because there are a lot of people that is the reality of their experience. They don't either have that parental guidance or love, or they're in experiences where the actual environment is not treating them as the treasure that they are. So how does one find that?
Ooh, you got to find it wherever you can. I mean, and what I tell young kids is that, you know, all it takes is one good person, you know, and kids know those good people in their lives. So for the young people out there, I tell them, find those good folks, because there's someone, maybe it's not your mom, maybe that person isn't in your household, maybe they're at church, maybe there's one of those teachers. You have to, when you find that person, you glom onto them.
Yeah.
You know, you stay in their face, you make yourself their priority. And in order to do that, that means you gotta kind of have your stuff together. You know, because people are always looking for the good kids. They're looking for kids to mentor. And it, you know, your life isn't sunk because your mom didn't do what she was supposed to, or your dad. There are plenty of kids who are beating the odds every single day. Yep. And it's because they believe the voices that they know. At some point, you're born with some innate sense of what is possible. Yeah. That just sort of sometimes gets either beaten out of you or it gets reinforced. But I knew at a very young age that I was smart and that I made sense. I knew that. And I know there are a lot of kids out there that are waking up every day going, it's not me, that's crazy, you know? And that's what you want to tell kids, to trust that part of themselves, because you do get that instinct at a very young age. So when you know you're smart, you find the person who sees that in you. Yeah. And that means you have to be wiser a lot older, sooner. You know, you have to know how to shake out the bad people in your life. And that's a tough thing to ask young kids to do. But kids know this. You know, when you're hanging around some of these friends, the folks that aren't going in the right direction, you got to go the other way.
No, but really, did you hear that? You know when you're with people.
You know your crew, you know.
And if they are not pulling you into your own joy and your own light, keep it moving.
You have to surround yourself with the people that you want to be.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing I tell young people is life is practice, you know. You're practicing, and I tell my girls this every day, you are practicing who you are going to be. So if you're getting up late and you're trifling and you're not getting your homework done, that's what you're practicing, you know?
Complaining, that's what you're practicing.
If you're a whiner, you're practicing being a whiner. If you're spoiled, you're practicing that. That doesn't just go away, you know? And so you have to start practicing who you want to be. Do you want to be dependable? Then you have to be dependable. If you want people to trust you, then you have to be trustworthy. And you have to start those habits very early. It's just like speaking correct English. Don't practice the other stuff, because you're not going to get a job that way. So practice who you want to be every single day. And that's what I think kids need to do who don't have mentors in their lives. Find that role model somewhere out there, even if you read it in a book, you know, find that inspiration.
I never got to the question my mom wanted me to
ask. What? Yes. What was that?
But you were talking about mentors.
Digress.
No, yes, it's okay. Can you talk a little bit about your relationship with your mom and how that influenced? Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I know.
And how that
made me cry,
influenced your relationship with your girls?
Oh my goodness. The mother that I am today is a direct result of Marion Robinson. You know, my mom is one of the smartest people with just plain old common sense. And the thing she always said that I do remember is that she told me and my brother, she says, I wasn't raising children, I was raising adults. So she treated us, she practiced treating us in the way she wanted us to be. So again, she always talked to us like we had sense. She never used baby talk. She would ask you to explain yourself, and she would include you in big grown-up conversations. There was never anything that she wouldn't talk to us about. If I had questions about, that uncle in the back, it'd be like, well, let me tell you his story and why he's back there and how you stay out of the back closet. Everybody's got an uncle. You don't knock on his door. When he comes out, he's a little drunk. We had our share, and be like, well, what's wrong with him? Well, let me tell you his story. So there was never anything off limits. She gave us chores early on. My father, they taught us the value of money. I remember my father one day, my brother thought we were rich. I don't know why, because that's how we were rich with love in our little bitty apartment. But one day he put out his whole paycheck. He had it in cash. And he sat there with my brother and he laid out every bill and he put money on top of every bill he had to pay in the month. And then what he was left with, which wasn't much, he said, this is what goes to everything that you asked for. And we were young at that time, and if you're sitting there with your dad with maybe $20, $40 for the rest of the month, you start thinking about whether you really want those new pair of shoes and whether you really need to do that extra thing. That's how our parents were. That's who my mom was to us. So she had a lot of common sense, and so I emulate her in the relationship that I have with my girls. I mean, I want them to talk to me about everything. So that means I gotta be open and I can't be judgmental, and you have to get that mom face right. It's like, oh, did that happen? Okay, tell me more. You just try not to react so you get the good information. You're just sitting there just like, you did what? Okay. Fix the face. It's like, okay, continue. I try to tell Sasha and Malia, do not go to other 14-year-olds for information, because all you all are dumb. Come talk to me. It's like, you all know nothing. Don't be sitting around in your little crew figuring out life. It's like
the age where it starts that you think you know
everything. And it's like, all of you are dumb. You know nothing. Love you.
In your experience.
So let's just talk about it. Don't ask Olivia what she thinks about sex. It's like, she doesn't know.
Your girls have had the same friends though for a long time, because I've been around the same group.
Oh yes.
Yeah. And so they've got a good core group.
They got a good core group, and they thought they knew everything at 14, and they did not. So I try to be open with my girls, and also help them practice their voice.
Yeah.
Because if they're not practicing with us, with me, with Barack at our dinner table, if they aren't learning how to make arguments and how to express themselves, Barack Obama. And I am not going to tell him you all reacted this way. He doesn't need to know this. I'd be like, no, they didn't even ask about you.
And when I said your name, no one did anything, so I just moved on.
You didn't talk about
it. So, speaking of 14-year-olds and not knowing much, do you think that young girls are dreaming differently today than we dreamed when we were young? And there's a couple parts to this question. And what did you dream of when you were young? Because it worked out really well, and we'd love to know. and do you think there's a way that we can help everyone dream in a more limitless way that is not gender-based and that is custom? Like that it's really curated for your own experience, not the way life has a tendency to limit us, even when we don't know it.
Yeah.
Because I know that for me, you and I have talked a lot about this. Culture was egging me to dream of my wedding.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I was also dreaming of Oscars and bossing people around and things like
Yeah.
that. But there was a lot of preoccupation
with
that I'm still unpacking. And I'm curious sort of how we can talk about dreaming.
Yeah.
And
you know, it's such a great question. I don't know that young girls are there yet. I think we're still at that stage where we're trying to figure out what it means to be women, and what we think of ourselves, what we think of each other. And you know, sorry, in light of this last election, I'm concerned about us as women and how we think about ourselves and about each other and what's really going on. I mean, I think more about what is going on in our heads where we let that happen. You know? So I do wonder, what are young girls dreaming about if we're still there, where when the most qualified person running was a woman, and look what we did instead. I mean, that says something about where we are. You know, I forget everybody else. That's what we have to explore, because if we as women are still suspicious of one another, if we're still, if we still have this crazy bar for each other that we don't have for men. If we're still doing that today, if we're more comfortable with, if we're not comfortable with the notion that a woman could be our president compared to what? You know? Then, we have to have that conversation with ourselves as women. This isn't an external conversation. That's on us.
It's also a conversation of what are we asking women and men or boys and girls to dream of different things? We talk so much about empowering young girls. What is the conversation?
I still think that our girls are taught to be perfect. And I think that they still dream of weddings and the security of the Prince Charming coming to say, I still think we do. I think we're working on it. I think, you know, I'm proud of what I hear from young girls, but I think something happens when they get to that stage where you're supposed to be married and have kids.
Missed it.
Know? Good for you. Good for you.
I mean, we've talked a lot about
But there's still the notion when you say, oh, you don't have kids.
Oh my God.
It's almost, Tracee Ellis Ross must not be happy because she's not married with kids.
Look where I'm sitting.
And look at what she is doing with her life. But still societally, we kind of look at that and go, you poor thing.
I know.
And then you're happy as a clam until somebody,
and then you start
thinking, well, maybe I'm not happy.
Did something happen?
What did I do? What happened to me all of a sudden? So I think we have to have these conversations because this is still going on. I wish that girls could fail as bad as men do and be okay. Because let me tell you, watching men fail up, it is frustrating.
Very frustrating.
It is frustrating to see a lot of men blow it and win. And we hold ourselves to these crazy standards. We hold each other to these standards. And so what do when I was young, I was like a regular kid. I dreamt of play those games of who are you gonna marry, which of the boys, and the number. You remember that?
Little origami thing.
The origami thing where you have the number, and in there would be the boy, how many kids you'd have, where you get married. And it was, for me, it was Hawaii, believe it or not.
Are you serious?
Yeah. But not because I knew anything about Hawaii. It was warm. You always picked the warm city. You didn't want to live in your own city, but who knew? But I dreamt of being a mother. I also had aspirations. Obviously, I thought I wanted to be a pediatrician at one point, and then I took math and science, and I was like, no. I think I'll use my voice. I'll be a lawyer, and then that didn't work out. So no, I didn't know what I could be. I didn't completely know. I'm still of that generation where our dreams were still pretty limited.
Yeah.
So what do I want for? I think if we want our daughters to dream bigger than we did, then we have more work to do.
Yeah.
We haven't really, I think so many of us have gotten ourselves at the table, but we're still too grateful to be at the table to really shake it up. And that's not a criticism, because for so many, just getting to the table was so hard, right? And so you just holding on, just trying to, but now we have to take some risks for our girls. We have to be willing to lose a little bit of something, that we can't just holding on to our seats at the table won't be enough to help our girls be all that they can be. And I think it's going to be on us as women, but I think men have an important role to play in that as well. I mean, what I've been telling a lot of men as I go around speaking, it's just, you can't have it both ways. You can't whisper these magical thoughts in your daughter's ear about who she can be and what she can do, and then leave and go into a workplace that you either run or manage, and you tolerate an existence, you can't have it both ways, because the workplace that you work in, the times you turn your head, you look the other way, the times you're sitting at a table where there are no people of color, no women, if you're tolerating that is the workplace that's going to be waiting for your little girl. But you've sold her a bill of goods. You told her she could be anything, but then you're not working to make sure that can be actualized. And so men have to kind of understand things just don't work out for your little precious pea if you're not making it work for all of us.
And I think this is a time for all of us, including and especially men, to stretch outside of our comfort zone and notice the places and be awake enough to use our voice, stand up for each other, and actually be of service to the change that's occurring and that we all want. And it's not easy, but it's something that has to happen.
Well, we have to be we have to feel a lot of discomfort. We have to be okay with that. And, so if you're sitting in any room and there's only y'all in the room, notice and have a problem with that. Don't be okay with that.
That's right.
So speaking of the times that we're in, because it is uncomfortable, it is justifiably appalling and terrifying.
But not for everybody.
That's right.
But that's important to remember. It's not for everybody.
Okay.
So we can't just sit in our rooms and go, aren't we outraged? Some people are like, this is good. They're quite satisfied.
That is true. But with that fear that comes for those that are appalled and so uncomfortable and frightened, the tendency and the ease is to shame, blame, scream, but the fertility in the moment is to take action. So how do we each stay motivated to use our own voices and to show up? And how do we do that as individuals? Like you say that, you see it, but not all of us have the resource and the support to be able to speak up, because that means you might lose your job. All of those things. So how do each of us find that moment to be an advocate? I mean, not that you have all the answers, but maybe you do.
Just maybe. I always think you start with what you can control. You start there, because thinking about changing your workplace and changing the way the world thinks, that's big, and it gets daunting, and then you shrink from that, right? So start with what you can control, and that's you first.
Yeah.
And those questions start within, you know. First of all, we have to start asking ourselves, are we using our voices?
Right.
Are we, when are we not? When are we playing it safe? And at least be cognizant of that fact and understand, well, these are the times that I shrunk away from doing more than I could. And let me think about why that was. Stop that. but we think about, well, that's a whole nother story, because, you know, that's not the answer either. And when I hear people say, you run, it's part of the problem. You know, what we still didn't get yes we can right. It's not yes you can, it's yes we can. And until we get that right, it doesn't matter who runs. Because look, I don't think I'm any different from Hillary. And until women get this stuff right, there's a lot of people who are like, you do it, and then it's like, oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
And there's midterms coming up, for example.
I didn't feel like it, you know. So we've got a lot of work to do before we're focused on the who, because we're the who. That we are the answer. All of us here in the room are the answer to our own problems. It is not finding the one right person that we think can save us from ourselves. It's us.
There you go.
It's us. So we've got to do that work internally first to figure out, well, what can I do in my life? What am I doing to empower the girls in my life to have a voice? Because the biggest impact a woman can have is on her children. Quite frankly, so that's a powerful, you know, when I said I'm mom in chief, and a lot of women ridiculed me for that, when I first came in, the first, best, most important job I have control over is who my girls are gonna be. And until and if I can't get them right, I can't get y'all kids right. I can't work for anybody else, because I have a level of control over who Malia and Sasha were until at least now. That's over. That's over. So the window's short, y'all. You know, you do what you can, and then they're 14 and they think they know everything, and you're like, okay, go out there, get your butt kicked, and then you'll figure it out. But I feel like we can start with ourselves, we can start with our kids, we can start within our own families. There are still women who aren't speaking up at their own dinner tables.
That's right.
You know, they're not going to contradict their husbands or their fathers, and we have to figure out, are we doing that? Are we part of that? You know, because
how can we support those women to find the courage and the ability to speak up in those private ways? That it is terrifying.
But it is a habit that has to be practiced, because we can't give other people their voices.
Nope.
That's right.
People have to decide. You have to dig way down deep. Some people, like I said, temperamentally, like me, I am always chatting and telling people what to do. You know, temperamentally, we were like that. But all of us are going to have to dig deep down inside of ourselves and figure out what fights we are willing to fight for ourselves and for our kids, and then take that action. And a lot of times that action is small. It's speaking up for your kids at school. It's going into your workplace and doing whatever you can, short of getting fired, you know, because that won't help. But to try to make a change in that workplace. What's happening at your dinner table? What kind of conversations? How are your other girlfriends thinking? You know, those battles are just as important than the big fights. Because let me tell you, you all have more influence in the lives of the people who love you than I do, no matter what you say. You know, you all are sitting at dinner tables with folks who don't agree with you, who aren't trying to empower you. What are you doing at those dinner tables? Because if you can't have that discussion with your husband or with your father, then it's going to be hard to change anybody else, because you haven't sort of started in your circle. And if you practice that courage first, that's powerful as far as I'm concerned. That leads to bigger things. Change starts close to home. You know, that's where it starts. So looking for the next person to run, and I don't mean to be, you know, to cut that off, but that's been our distraction. We're just going to wait for the next person to save us. We thought it was Barack Obama, and he didn't end racism, so I don't know. What do we do now? So, but that's, you know, I mean, it's like, I voted for the black man, and we're still living in racism, and it's like, yeah.
I think that uncovered a lot. A lot of the curtain got pulled back. Yeah. So we're almost out of time. I will.
No, we're not. Man, that was short.
It was short.
That was a jip. Blame Tina Chin on that.
It's always Tina's fault.
That's always Tina's.
Where do you find hope?
Oh.
And when you can't find it, what do you do?
Oh, you can always find hope. I find hope in all these beautiful young people. Man. Oh, my goodness. That's why when I was First Lady, whenever I got down, I read some bad clips, something happened, I was like, please just put me with some kids. I just need to be with some kids, because that's what this is all for, you know? It's, I mean, we all have young people in our lives, and they all come on to this planet, on this earth, with all this possibility. They're all our children are good, and they're beautiful, and they just look to us for so much. They are so open.
That's right.
And you know, they don't come here jaded. They don't come here as misogynists. They don't come here hating people because of their sexual orientation. They come here pure and clean and open, and then we feed all that stuff into them. But it's all there, and you look at the kids from Parkland, and you look at all, you know, the kids who are stepping out. They're going to be the ones that make the change, because they're fearless. They're not worried about what they're going to lose and how they look and how do I leverage. They're not there yet, so they're still so open. And everything I do, I think about how it's going to impact these young people. And you think, because of them, we can't give up. I mean, what choice do we have? What future am I passing on to my girls and all our kids if I wake up and I'm hopeless? That there is no use in that. All we have is hope. That's all we have. We hope for, when we have hope, and we have work. We hope and we work. We hope, we work, we pray. We do all of that at the same time, but you can never afford to give up hope. And our kids deserve better than that. They deserve better than us shrugging our shoulders and saying, that's too hard. I can never do this. I can never do that. So our young people always give me hope, and we always have reason to work hard for them.
Agreed.
Agreed.
It's so hard to let it end.
Well, let me just say this. This room, this summit, this is also a reason for hope. Because I think some of what we miss is that we don't often, in this internet world, in this social media world, we don't come together. And you feel alone, right? And you watch the news and you think that doesn't reflect me, or what is this world coming to? And then you come into a room like this where there are so many people from so many walks of life who want the same thing. And this is America, and it's everywhere. It isn't just locked up in little cities, and it's everywhere. We just get confused because we don't get to talk to each other. We don't get to connect, and we don't get to remind ourselves of how much we have in common as a people, that we want just basic stuff like my mom and dad. We want decent jobs. We want our kids to get a good education. We want to have some health insurance. We want our kids to go to college and have a good life. We want to be able to retire and live in dignity. You know, not everybody wants some big home or man cave and a big car and a jet. You know, most people don't.
That's right.
They respect each other. They live with decency and truth. That's who we are, and times like this should remind us all, you know, of what we're all working for. And I'm proud of everyone who's worked to organize this, to keep these efforts up. And this is the do that we talk about. So it's coming together like this. And finding those that are doing and lifting up the work, even if it's not your work, it's finding the work of others and helping in very small ways to lift things up. You don't have to be first lady, you don't have to be president, you don't have to run for anything to have a significant impact and to make the changes that we're looking for. And this is how you begin. So I'm just thankful to everyone who has put so much work into this summit. And I know that there's more work that we have to do in the months and years to come. It never ends. It never ends. And Tracee, you're out there, girl, just holding it together and doing a phenomenal job. I'm so proud of you. I love you.
Thank you, Michelle.